Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about AMD 9950X 3D. This is the latest and greatest from AMD that gives us some incredible performance in gaming, especially in certain games. And this is coupled with the RTX 5080, the fastest GPU on the market right now. But it's not just any RTX 5080, it's actually the 5080 Hof Lianli Evo Rgb, which has some really cool RGB on the backplate and also performs slightly better than the standard Founders Edition card. So let's get straight into it. We'll start off by showing you what's inside the box for the AIO, and then move on to the CPU. Let's start off with the 580. This comes packed in an anti-static bag along with some screws, and of course the graphics card itself. It looks awesome. There's 3 fans at the front. We've got 2 connectors for power, and then we've got a connector for the RGB. It connects via a USB connection which goes directly into the motherboard. You can control all the RGB effects from there. The other end of the cable connects to the back plate. If you remove these 4 screws here, then you can actually take off the back plate and look at the PCB from the back so you can see the different components that they use on the card. You can also see that there's lots of RGB going on around the back, which looks awesome. And then once you plug everything in, you get this really nice effect where you've got the RGB shining through the fins of the heatsink, which looks really nice. This can connect up to 4 pins for the RGB, or if you want to connect it up to 3 pin, then you can use the included adapter. Now it does support 5V and 12V connections. So if you have a motherboard that supports this, then you can actually daisy chain the 5V and 12V connections together to reduce the amount of cables you need. Then we've got the CPU. This comes in an anti-static bag with a small foam piece inside just to stop it moving around. Then we've got the box for the 995X 3D. On the front, it says 3D V-cache, which is essentially extra cache for the CPU. We've got the model number, the specs, and TDP, as well as the AM5 socket, which is compatible with current generation motherboards. Inside, there's a small foam piece just protecting the CPU. Once we take that out, we're left with our CPU. It looks pretty normal compared to the last generation, but remember this does have that extra cache, and it's made on the 3D V-cache, which means it should perform a lot better than the regular 9950X. You'll notice at the top, there's no integrated graphics, so this will require a discrete GPU to work. Now, for the cooler, we're using the Darkrock Pro 4. This is one of their latest coolers, which comes with 4 heat pipes. We've also got dual 120-meter fans, and it comes with some NTK3. If you haven't used NTK3 before, it's a thermal interface material which replaces normal thermal paste. It's a bit more complicated to install, but it does give you better cooling and it lasts longer. For the motherboard, we're using the Asus Crosshair X6 70E Hero, which is currently the best AM5 board on the market. It's got loads of features, and it's a really nice board to build on. It's got a ton of connectivity, including Wi-Fi 6E, tons of USB ports both at the back and at the front, as well as loads of M2 slots. As far as I know, this is the only board that has an M2 slot that supports Gen 5 and also a heatsink over the top. So if you are running a Gen 5 NVMe SSD, then this would be the ideal board. Okay, so we've now built the system and we've tested it out in a few games, and we're going to show you the results. Now, let's talk about the performance. In Cyberpunk, we tested the game at ultra settings with ray tracing set to medium. We got an average frame rate of 96.9 FPS with a 1% low of 63.3 and a 1% low of 55.8. This is a great result, and it shows the power of the RTX 580. Remember, this does have DLSS 3, so we did use that in this test. In Forza Horizon 5, we tested the game at ultra settings with TAA and SSR set to quality. We got an average frame rate of 125.8 FPS with a 1% load of 114.3 and a 1% load of 101.7. Again, this is another great result, and it shows how well the 9950X 3D works with the RTX 580. In Modern Warfare 2, we tested the game at ultra settings with FSR set to quality. We got an average frame rate of 145.8 FPS with a 1% low of 130.2 and a 1% low of 109.4. Again, Very good performance. In Warzone 2, we tested the game at Pro settings with FSR set to quality. We got an average frame rate of 92.4 FPS with a 1% low of 83.4 and a 1% low of 75.5. This is pretty decent considering the game is very demanding, and with all the settings turned up to max, it looks really nice. Finally, in Spider-Man, we tested the game at Ultra settings with ray tracing set to medium. We got an average frame rate of 102.5 FPS with a 1% low of 78.3 and a 1% low of 69.8. Again, solid performance. Now let's talk about thermals and noise levels. Under gaming load, the CPU was running at around 85 to 86 degrees Celsius, which is pretty good. The cooler was doing a great job of keeping the CPU temps down, even under full load. The CPU was only reaching around 65 to 70 degrees Celsius, which is very impressive. In terms of noise levels, the fans were only reaching around 42 to 43 decibels, which is pretty quiet. Even under full load, the system wasn't getting too loud, which is great news. Finally, let's talk about pricing and availability. The 995X3D is set to release on October for around $699, which is pretty expensive. But the performance of the processor should match the price. The RTX 580 is currently available, and it starts at around $1,200, which is also pretty expensive. But the performance of the card is unmatched in its class. Overall, the 995X 3D and the RTX 5080 Hof Lianli Evo Rgb are two really powerful components that, when combined, create a great gaming experience. The 580 is currently the fastest GPU on the market, and the 995X 3D is one of the fastest CPUs on the market. When you combine the two with a great cooler like the Dark Rock Pro 4, you get amazing performance in most games. Prices are pretty high, but the performance of the components should match the price. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please leave a like. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.